Hello, I'm Carol Swain. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Dr. Carol Swain. This is a show where we talk about family, faith, politics, unity, and whatever else is on my mind. Today, I'm thinking about the U.S. Constitution. And if you're not thinking about it or you haven't thought about it lately, America is facing a constitutional crisis. There are so many Americans that are not familiar with the Constitution, and yet it is the basis for the rule of law in America. It is the basis for our civil rights and our civil liberties. Much of the turmoil and conflict and confusion taking place in our nation could be addressed if we return to constitutional government. We have a democratic republic. That democratic republic is in crisis. Joining me today as a guest is Joni Bryant. Joni is the founder of a nonprofit called the 917 Society. This organization is dedicated to getting the Constitution into the hands of 8th graders. Help me to welcome Joni Bryant to Conversations.
Thank you, Carol, for having me today. I'm so excited to be here on your show.
I always love being with you, Joni. The last time we were together, it was for the tribute to law enforcement, a national tribute to law enforcement. And so you were a great partner in that little venture.
Yeah, I thought we were pretty good together. We should have our own show together and co-hosting.
Well, today I have you here to talk about the 917 Society and your effort to get the Constitution into the hands of as many young people as possible. Why do you think that's important?
Oh, it is, for me, it's a passion because I realized at a late age in my life that I had never read the Constitution. I had been asked that question by someone who had been involved in the Civil Rights Program years ago. And he asked me that one day as we were discussing a case. I worked at a retirement community where he lived. And it prompted me to realize that I, as a citizen, have enjoyed all the wonderful things that America offers, yet I had never read the Constitution, and so it's important.
Was this a resident at this home that asked you if you'd ever read the Constitution?
Yes, it was. He had been involved in the Civil Rights Movement. He had ran for governor in the 60s, quite an amazing person. He was a constitutional lawyer, and so he carried a Constitution in his pocket. And so one day we were discussing something, and he said, "My dear," he said, "you realize that's unconstitutional."
So Joni, what did you want to do to someone that was unconstitutional?
Well, it was actually, we were discussing a court case. It was the FEC versus Citizens United.
Oh, I remember that case.
Yes, and the Supreme Court decided in 2011 basically that corporations had the rights of citizens. So it changed, the way corporations were treated. And so he was very much against that, and he said, "You realize it's unconstitutional." Well, I didn't realize that, and so that prompted me to start researching for myself. Why did I never read my Constitution?
So, Joni, walk us through what it was like for you when you picked up the little Constitution and you started reading it. Did you understand what you were reading, or did you immediately start seeking out other people to help you interpret?
Well, it was really interesting because I'd had bits and pieces in school, but my degree's in science, so I'd never actually had all the Constitution or read all of it. And so when I picked up the Constitution, in my mind, I thought, oh, this is going to be complicated. This is going to be hard. I'm going to need help. And then as I started to read it, I realized, and he had said to me, it's not hard, and it really isn't hard. And so it prompted me to want to make a difference. I had spent years as a social worker in rural Alabama, and I always taught my children, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of what?
The problem.
The problem.
And the thing about the Constitution that I hope all of our viewers will just meditate on is that it's written for we the people.
Absolutely, Carol. It is for we the people, and we can read it and understand it. And one of the reasons we chose to start in 8th grade is because in that year in the U.S. curriculum, they're supposed to do civics in depth. And as I started researching about the Constitution, I learned there's a federal law that all schools that get federal money are supposed to have a program on the Constitution on or around September 17th.
Well, you know, I bet that's interesting these days because our nation is disrespected in many schools and colleges and universities. You find almost a hatred of America, its foundings. We're told that the Constitution is not relevant because it was written by dead old white guys.
Yes.
And so it must be challenging to approach schools, and I know they vary a lot, but to tell them that this is a federal law, you have to have a program on the Constitution, and that program could be having 4 progressive activists say that the Constitution is meaningless and worthless, but you have a different vision.
I do, and the way we approach it is very fun. We honor Constitution Day, and that's what the law says. They're supposed to honor Constitution Day, and so that's why we're named the 917 Society, because September 17th is Constitution Day. It's the day in 1787 our Constitution was signed into law. And so that's how we approach it, and we offer a free program to teachers and students. And so we have had no problems because the teachers loved. I was married to a public school teacher and I was a social worker, and so I was around all the educational programs in public school for years and years. I did a lot of fundraising for public school, and so the way we approach this is to offer this free to our teachers and our kids, and they love it. We have had wonderful responses, but I understand what you're saying, and I have had those questions about, is it relevant? Well, stop and think about it, Carol. You and I, 100 years ago, neither one of us could vote.
That's right.
You know, but
well, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, think, well, 101, I think 101 years
ago. Whatever. There was a time in America when women couldn't vote, when blacks couldn't
Absolutely.
vote, and when you had to have wealth and property to vote. And so there were some white people that were disenfranchised as well.
Absolutely.
And so the right, you know, to vote and to be able to really see how the Constitution applies, that's very important.
Yes.
And there is a huge error that a lot of people make when they interpret the Constitution, and it has to do with the 3/5 clause.
Yes.
When they're referring to the slaves.
Right.
And I hear so many educated people say that at the time the Constitution was ratified, blacks were considered 3/5 a human being. That is not true. At the time the Constitution was ratified, the debate was not about the humanity of blacks. It was about how many representatives the House members would get in Congress. And we're going to continue this discussion after our break. So we'll be back in a moment to continue our discussion about the Constitution. So stick with us.
Conversations with Dr. Carol Swain is made possible by Cooper Steel, a family-owned business that provides the steel fabrications for some of the greatest buildings across the United States. 60 years ago, Kenneth and Faye Cooper founded their company in Shelbyville, Tennessee.
Cooper Steel believes in sponsoring Carol Swain because we believe as she does, you build strong, you stand strong.
What started as a vision and now a nationally recognized and operated company that remains true to its founders' Judeo-Christian values and principles. Cooper Steel is committed to excellence, responsibility, and community. Cooper Steel's motto is, build strong, stand strong. They treat their employees and customers like family. Thank you to Cooper Steel for standing strong with Conversations with Dr. Carol Swain. Learn more about our generous sponsor at coopersteel.com.
I'm back with my guest, Joni Bryant. We're talking about the U.S. Constitution, something that you should read. Joni.
Yes.
For the people that are watching, and maybe they read the Constitution a long time ago, maybe they have never read it, where would you tell them to start? Would you start in the beginning, or would you start with the Bill of Rights, or would you just start with the preamble and jump around? What's your favorite part?
Well, the way that we present the program to the kids is really cool, and my thought is, of course, we start with the Declaration. We also have that
the
in
Declaration
here.
of Independence.
It's in here. We start with that. But in the books that we give out, we want to make this a special moment for our kids. We want our kids to realize that the Constitution is their guidebook to citizenship. And so we have the teachers sign and date and make it a very special. And each student gets their very own Constitution to take home with them to read. And it's only like 45 pages, so it's not long at all. And we have a adorable cover. And so we've had kids come back to school the next year that still have their Constitution. So we want them to carry it with them.
Do we know that they read it?
Absolutely. And we're getting great comments from the teachers. In fact, one of the great conversations, one of the teachers wrote and said, we spent the whole hour discussing why there's no prayer in school. The kids were saying, well, it doesn't say that in the Constitution. So she had to explain why that came about, how that was a Supreme Court interpretation, that it didn't actually say that in the Constitution. And so some really great questions. Our kids are smart, and we give them the actual words, because a lot of people don't realize the students don't get all the words. They just get bits and pieces.
That's right, and that's for the rest of Americans. But I'm going to press you.
Okay.
What's your favorite part of the Constitution?
Well, the Bill of Rights, of course.
Yes.
And I think for all of us that are Americans, that is precious to me, those Bill of Rights. And I'm just so thankful we have that, because that's what sets us apart as Americans.
Now, Joni, when I published my book, Be the People, A Call to Reclaim America's Faith and Promise,
Yes.
which is being released soon as a paperback in trade,
wonderful.
A trade book with a new introduction, I felt like some of the foundational documents that you needed to be an informed American included the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the 10 Commandments, because these are shared understandings that are part of our Judeo-Christian roots. And anyone that wants to argue that the nation does not have Judeo-Christian roots, then I challenge them to look at the data and look at the constitutions of the 13 colonies, and then we can talk about whether or not the people who founded this nation, if there were enough God-fearing people, if there weren't, then why did they put it in their constitutions?
Absolutely.
Why was that important? And then we also know that with the Mayflower Compact, we've just had the 400th year anniversary. Those people that signed that compact did it for the honor of God, for the advancement of the kingdom message. And so there's just so much that people need to know to be good Americans. And you're right, the Bill of Rights. And it needs to be memorized. It's not something that just needs to be read. Is there a way that when we give the Constitution to the young people, that we can encourage them, to actually memorize it?
Well, something that we're doing with 917 is this year we have a wonderful person that plays Abraham Lincoln, and we're going to be doing a series, a 10-part series on the Bill of Rights, and he'll be explaining about the Bill of Rights. And so it's going to be a lot of fun, a fun way to get the kids involved and get them understanding each one of the Bill of Rights. So that's something that we're excited about doing, because we have a resource page on our website that the teachers can use, and it's all kinds of free things and videos and things that they can help them in their classroom, and lesson plans.
That's a great resource. We're going to take a break, and when we return, we're going to learn more about Joni and her quest to get the Constitution into the hands of 8th graders, not just in Tennessee, but all around the country. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
For those of you who would like to know what exactly our children are facing in their education system, this is a must-read book. It will equip you and prepare you to make decisions about your child's health, about your child's education. So I want to encourage every one of you to grab a copy of Dr. Swain's book and join with me and Carol on the front lines in this critical time to eradicate the liberal abduction of our children.
I'm back with my guest, Joni Bryant. We're talking about the U.S. Constitution and her effort to get a copy into the hands of 8th graders. Joni, I know that you have been able to cover Tennessee. I understand that you have plans to go nationwide.
Absolutely. We've had great success. I started the project a few years ago, and we have just slowly been building. We don't receive state or federal funds, and we're a 501c3, so we have businesses and individuals that care about our Constitution that donate to our cause. And so last year we were able to actually give out all the 8th graders in Tennessee. We gave out 90,000 Constitutions. And this year for Constitution Day, we gave out 200,000, and we covered 3 states.
Which 3 states did you cover?
We covered North Dakota.
North Dakota, how was
Yes.
that state picked?
Well, AMVETS, their organization, their state commander called and said they would love to help distribute them. So we got them printed up, shipped them up there to North Dakota, and they delivered to 10,000 kids in North Dakota. And so Kentucky, we're finishing up Kentucky because Kentucky's been closed for COVID. And so we've delivered part of the state, and then we have the rest of theirs that are going out. And then of course all of Tennessee got theirs. We spent about a week getting all those delivered, and our AMVETS in Tennessee helped us. So they're kind of our boots on the ground that are volunteering to help us get them out to the kids. Now this year we have a huge goal. We want to reach 1.5 million kids in 14 states.
I think that that is a wonderful goal, and it will be great, you know, to see how your organization expands.
Yes.
And if there was a way, and maybe you've already been thinking about this, that you could interact with more of those young people that read the Constitution, or maybe on your website have the exercises and things that they can do as they read the Constitution. They probably have questions, and maybe there are teachers that could volunteer their time, people that care about the Constitution that could actually help them understand it, and why it's so important.
Well, we actually do have plans this year. The AMVETS Junior program is a national program, and we're partnering with them to have like a club for the kids so they can join the 917 Society in their schools and have a club all year that discusses constitutional issues and has competitions and things like that, essays and different things for the kids. So we are working on that now to develop something for the kids so they can belong to it. Because, you know, that's what's so important about our Constitution, is it is something that binds every single one of us together as citizens. And it's the one thing that we all have in common is our Constitution. And it's so important that we share that, and that it doesn't matter, you know, who you are. If you're an American citizen, you know, this binds you.
And it's even more than that, Joni, because the Constitution protects persons.
Yes.
And so it protects people who are in this country that are not American citizens, and that's something that's not widely known. And in an earlier segment, I talked about the 3/5 clause of the Constitution and how people misinterpret that.
Yes.
They say that blacks were not human when the Constitution was ratified, and that's not true. There was a battle over representation. The South had 600,000 slaves. They wanted to count their slaves for purposes of representation in Congress. And in the Constitution, there was one representative per 30,000 in the beginning, and now it's probably one representative per 750,000 Americans or persons. And so if the North, that was not heavily into slaveholding, if they had not negotiated that 3/5 clause, the South would have gotten far more representatives than the North, and slavery might have continued even longer.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, it's so important for us to know that, you know, in our history, it's important not to buy into this revisionist history, I guess you call it.
Yes, it is definitely revisionist.
Because, you know, our Revolutionary War was not fought for slavery. That was not a reason. But yet you have, you know, programs like the 1619 Project that is trying to promote that. And that's not true. And even though, you know, slavery was an issue during our founding, we had slaves, our founders were so brilliant, they made a way for us to make the changes necessary.
But here's another thing, Joni, about slavery, like the narrative that the 1619 Project, New York Times Project, puts forth. it is so error-ridden and so false on certain aspects.
Right.
And if you think about America, the first blacks that came to America, they came as indentured servants. Now, it was involuntary servitude. They served 7 years along with whites that came, and then they were released. They became the backbone of free blacks in America. And many of them went and bought slaves themselves. They participated in it. And at one point, then I think it was 1640 when slavery became permanent, but until 1661, if a slave converted to Christianity, they were set free. But of course, the greed motive changed all that. We're going to go to a break, and it's been a great pleasure having you on the Conversations with Dr. Carol Swain.
Thank you so much.
So stick with us, and I'll be back.
Demands for political correctness and mandatory race and gender diversity training have placed onerous burdens on businesses, churches, and nonprofits. Learn how to improve relations by educating your team with principle-based training that brings people together rather than driving wedges between them. Unity Training Solutions helps your organization build strong teams by respecting and harnessing individual talent. Achieving your goals by providing viable alternatives to the divisive and counterproductive critical race and gender theories is our mission. Our expert facilitators and consultants bring greater harmony to workplaces and educational institutions by respecting everyone's civil rights and equality under the law. We encourage Americans to rediscover and re-embrace our national motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, one. A few of our core values and principles include no hidden agendas, respecting the differences of others. Our citizens share more similarities than differences, and trusting in the traditional principles of hard work, integrity, and accountability. Our seminars are geared towards your organization, educational, business, corporate, as well as churches and nonprofits. Want to know more about how to strengthen your team? Knowledge is power. You can learn more about Unity Training Solutions at unitytrainingsolutions.com.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Conversations with Dr. Carol Swain. My guest, Joni Bryant, left me with this pocket constitution that she gives to 8th graders. And one of the neat things about the Constitution is that each student is able to have it presented to them with their name, but also in the very end, she shows me there's an oath of allegiance to our nation. And I think she's doing some fantastic work. I encourage you to go to the website of the 1917 Society, and if you want to make a donation, well, that's good. And I thank you for tuning in to this show, and hope that you will continue to watch and tell your friends about this show where we talk about faith, family, politics, unity. We're trying to bring Americans together. We care about our Constitution. We care about the rule of law. We care about our faith and our family. We care about our brothers and sisters of all races and ethnicities. If America is to be the great nation that it is supposed to be, not do, if it's going to be that great nation, then we all have to work together. So I look forward to seeing you next week in another episode of Conversations. Thank you.